watching Veracity Hill. Here is your host, Dr. J.
Well, a good day to you, and thanks for joining us here for another episode of Veracity Hill, where we are striving for truth on Christian worldview formation.
I feel like this is like a Good Morning America show since I'm holding coffee. I just wanted to interject that.
Good morning, or afternoon to you. Dante Stack, you have made the appearance on Veracity Hill many times now.
Twice.
Yes, but those were virtual. But now here you are in the flesh.
I am fleshly. We are not Gnostics here. We believe in flesh and spirit.
You're going over my head now already with all this terminology.
Sorry.
Gnostic, you know a little something about Gnosticism.
I wish I could say I was like, I was born a Gnostic. But no. So cards on the table. You and I have published, as of today, as of this morning, a book.
Yes.
The first of hopefully many.
Doorway Crew, adventure number 1001, published by Defenders Media. The title is Gabby Goes to Ludicrum. It's a new children's novel series. And so we are here to talk about worldview formation, why is it important, and why we decided to work on this project together.
But this isn't just a promo. I want to be upfront about that because I want to have a real conversation. So I work part of the time for Defenders Media, part of the time I am a school teacher. So I spend a lot of time with children. I also have children of my own, and sometimes I feel existential dread for Generation Z and whatever generation's coming after that. And I think to a certain extent, I'm worried that the church and the Christian community in the West is not realizing how quickly everything about life has changed.
Yeah.
For all of us, but particularly for children. And of course, I'm talking mostly about the advent of the internet.
Yeah.
And social media.
Technology, cell phones.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard for us to grapple with how that's really changing the brains of children. And so I guess that's my perspective. So I wanted to start off by asking you, do you agree? Do you think kids today their spiritual formation is in more danger than in previous generations?
So I would suspect that it is because, part of my interest with Veracity Hill is to help build flourishing Christians, to have a good, strong, robust worldview, to think deeply about their faith. The statistics, earlier in the year, in the springtime, May or June, I did a series looking at statistics. It was Ligonier with Lifeway, the state of theology, and just seeing how illiterate, biblically and theologically illiterate, evangelical Christians are. So not just talking about people who call themselves Christians, but people who say that the Bible is the Word of God, they go to church every week, etc. These are people we would identify descriptively as evangelicals, and to see the surprising statistics about what they don't know. And this is adults.
So what do you mean by what they don't know?
Yes, so what they don't know about the historic Christian faith. For example, the one stat that I cited quite a bit was about how few evangelicals there are who believe that Jesus is an eternal being. Rather, they think he's created or the greatest of beings, right? That's sort of classical Arianism. That's not the Orthodox Christian faith. So a statistic like that, if we're concerned that, and that was a majority of evangelicals who believed that wrong thing. And when I say wrong, I mean because the Christian church historically never believed that. So if adults are theologically illiterate, are biblically illiterate, they don't know what the Bible teaches, they don't know what the Bible says, they don't have the big picture of the Bible because a lot of sermons in pulpits are just verse by verse here and there, and people don't get the big picture of what the Bible teaches. If they are theologically and biblically illiterate, then they are going to either pass on theological illiteracy to their children, or they won't pass on anything at all. So I would suspect that children would largely be theologically and biblically illiterate.
Okay, all right.
I know that was a lot.
This isn't in the notes that we talked about going into what we wanted to talk about. But now you got me curious because now I'm blanking on my question. So we're gonna move right on. All right. So help me understand, because when we started the Doorway Crew project and we decided, hey, there's a need here with younger people.
Yeah.
We use the phrase worldview formation. But so far we talked about spiritual formation.
Yep.
I think spiritual formation, I think spending time in the Word, I think spending time in prayer. I don't think about how people living in India see the world and how that relates to me, or how the other people's view of the world matters to me, and why I should understand that. Can you make the link between spiritual formation and worldview formation?
Sure, yeah. I'll try a couple paths to link the two.
And also define worldview formation.
Okay, so worldview formation, a worldview is simply the way in which we view the world, right? It's a compound word, world and view. And it's our beliefs about reality. It's the collection of our beliefs about reality. And so the link to worldview formation and spiritual formation is this. We want our spiritual lives to be grounded in reality. We do not want to simply be believing in a useful fiction, because then what we believe is happening in our spiritual, if that were the case, then what we believe in our spiritual lives is simply a fabrication in our own minds. And we don't want to simply be making up fictions in our own minds. We want our experiences to be reflective of what's happening in reality. So when we feel God's presence, it's because God's presence is actually there, not because it's happening in our imaginations. So we want our spiritual formation reflected in reality. And the way we learn about what reality is like is by having a good worldview. Secondly, worldview formation itself, thinking about how we think about the world, right, itself is an act of spiritual formation. Because as we learn more about our own worldview and the worldviews of others, we find ourselves growing and edified in our faith. We become confident in our faith. We are flourishing. We become more courageous in our faith. And those are spiritual attributes. We grow in that way. So through those two paths, I'll link worldview formation with spiritual formation. So again, first, that spiritual worldview formation helps us to recognize spiritual formation is grounded in reality, and that worldview formation itself is an act of spiritual formation.
So, okay, I'm trying to digest what you just said. Is it fair to say worldview formation is like the marriage of spiritual formation with philosophy and science?
So yeah, worldview is just sort of a broad, accessible, it includes philosophy as a discipline. Philosophy itself is a broad discipline, simply the study of wisdom, the love of wisdom. And so in that sense, they are very similar. But a lot of people, when you use the term philosophy, they're thinking super nerdy stuff, thinking ideas.
Like, should our children be reading Immanuel Kant right now?
Yeah, that's going to be a little too advanced for them unless they're like a genius. So what we need to do instead is to offer resources that are more easily understood and more interesting and engaging to a child's mind, like narrative. Children can learn through narrative. It's engaging. It keeps their interest.
Would you call narrative a useful fiction?
Well, it depends if it's based in history or not. Now, just to be clear, Doorway Crew is a fiction novel series. It takes place on different planets, the series. So, unless we're just prophets somehow, and there are planets out there where stuff's happening. But we'll talk about that book and the details of it a little later. But what'd you think there about worldview formation and spiritual formation, the connection thereof?
Yeah, I'm still a little bit struggling to make the direct connection of how do I... Okay, so I'll use my own children. So I have two sons. that I've adopted through foster care. So I didn't have them since, they were babies. Got them already as these beings that walk around and have thoughts and views of things.
Yep.
So spiritual formation, I feel like I know how to do that, right? I take them to church. I pray with them. We read the Bible. I talk about Jesus.
Yeah.
But if you were to come and say, Dante, make sure they're getting worldview formed,
Yeah.
I don't even know where to begin.
Well, let me ask you, so why do you have them read the Bible?
For their spiritual formation.
And so why are you interested in their spiritual formation?
So that they can love the Lord with all their heart, soul, and mind. And love their neighbor as themselves.
Why should they do that?
Because Jesus told me so.
How do you know Jesus told you so? Ultimately, however far we want to take this, you're going to get yourself to worldview, right? Because your beliefs about the world.
Let the viewer understand. I know how to defend my faith, but I get intimidated defending my faith to an apologist because I'm afraid anything I say will be heresy, because it feels like it always is.
Heresy has always gotten your interest. You've got some books on that sort of stuff.
Yeah, because I'm always falling into it, apparently.
But no, don't feel intimidated, right? The point is simply that that no matter how far you want to take it, you think that loving God with all your mind, heart, soul, and strength is a moral good, and now you're making a claim about reality, that there are moral goods to be pursued that exist in the world, and that stems from your Christian belief. Your Christian belief is a worldview, and you want to pass on that worldview to your children.
Okay.
And so there are multiple strategies for how we can pass on our worldview to our children. Sometimes it doesn't go well. The way in which parents pass on their worldview backfires because it's too rigid, it's too stern, it's not as loving, it's not conversational, and it's authoritarian. And if you don't couple that leadership in the home with organic, loving relationship, kids are going to rebel. You see this time to time. There's even a number of Christian apologists who are well known, but turns out that their parenting style or their family life was a mess, and their kids are rebels now. So let me give one popular example. While he doesn't present himself as an apologist, John Piper, very famous Reformed pastor, theologian. He's written multiple books, right? Many books have been influential for many college students. Don't Waste Your Life, right? Other theological works. But his son, Abraham Piper, who grew up in his church, is now a famous TikTok star bashing Christianity with all these videos that he does on TikTok. So that's an instance of when the parenting style did not lead to a flourishing Christian faith in his son, which is sad.
And yet I smirk because, of course, you go to the Calvinist example.
You know me and my interests.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
So it's all about Christian worldview.
No, the example I was going to go to was so many examples of biblical, godly people in the Bible and their children not following.
Yeah, Samuel is one of them. Yeah,
his son sucked.
Yeah.
Sorry, language.
Yeah, they were terrible sons, right? So sometimes what happens is we don't have that loving parenting style. So we don't want to be overly rigid. We want to have great conversations with our children at the dinner table. We want to eat meals with them. That's sort of like a basic that, earlier you were talking about how, it seems like maybe there's this loss of spiritual formation. Some of it comes down to the day-to-day ways of living life together. Generally speaking, parents aren't even eating meals with their children. Now, I grew up in a home, thankfully, where we had dinner every night together. And so that's a tradition that my wife and I continue to do with our children, where we eat dinner together every night. At the dinner table, you have conversations about life, what you did that day. Usually children say, oh, nothing. But then you ask them some follow-up questions and you get the ball rolling. Well, one of the areas in apologetics that you and I saw missing was children's novels. So not quite young adult, which is more early teens, but 8 to 12-year-old books for children that are engaging children to think about worldview in a way that's not preachy, not confrontational, but engaging. There's plot, there's storylines, there's multiple arcs. So we sort of brainstormed, conceived of this series, Doorway Crew. And I don't know if we want to get into it now or if you had a few more questions.
I'm not quite there yet.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I do want to talk about Doorway Crew.
Yeah, it's an exciting project.
I do want to get into why.
Okay.
Why are we both sensing? I certainly sense it. We talked about technology being the culprit, maybe, but I do want to put some numbers to it. So Barna put out a study last year. It said, and this was looking at surveying Protestant pastors.
Okay.
And they said 65% of Protestant pastors say school is a bad influence on spiritual formation. So that's 65% say kids aren't getting spiritual formation at school.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
I mean, not only are they not getting they're getting one type of spiritual formation. They're not getting Christian spiritual formation. They are getting spiritual formation of a different type.
That's interesting.
But
what do you mean by that? Actually, let's go down that road for a second.
Well, because you can't be spiritual. Because of your worldview. Let's just assume an atheistic worldview.
Okay.
That worldview teaches a philosophy. So what does that philosophy lead to about the spiritual life? Well, an atheistic philosophy might say there's actually no spirit. So what that does, even though we think there actually are spirits, we are spiritual beings. So what that does is it deprives someone from spiritual growth and flourishing. It sends the spirit in a different direction. So it's spiritual malformation. That's what it is. Now, but not only do I find that believable, what's happening, because when you look at other metrics like reading and math, I mean, everything's on the decline in the public schools, or even just in general, even the private schools, perhaps, because of, like we talked about, technology. So there are challenges. There are unprecedented challenges facing parents today. It's a new world and a new venture to have to deal with technology for parents.
Okay, I want to push back on the malformation comment in a moment, but let me get through these other couple of stats I found interesting. So 65% of pastors saying school, bad spiritual formation. 94% said culture and society is a bad influence on spiritual formation.
Okay.
Which, again, that one even more obvious, right? I think we'd be hard-pressed to not agree with that comment.
Although maybe things are shifting in the culture. I think, I don't want to get into specifics too much, but I think a lot of people are beginning to push back on certain cultural trends that have been alive for 15 minutes, figuratively speaking, and realizing, hey, this was actually a bad idea. So, having men and women's sports, for example, I think there's a lot of pushback happening now from allowing that. So maybe the tide's turning on the culture. We'll see.
Okay. And then lastly, and this one was most staggering to me. 20% of Protestant pastors say they prioritize parent training of children's spiritual formation.
Okay.
So I'll say that again. 20% of Protestant pastors prioritize parent training for children of spiritual formation. So that means families, parents are not getting trained, are not getting the needed information, not getting the education from their churches on how to raise their children in a godly way.
Well, this is why you've seen...
Where are they supposed to get it, Dr. J?
Yeah.
Where are they supposed to get it if not from pastors?
Yeah.
Not from their church community.
This has clearly been a problem because there are apologetics authors like Natasha Crane. We've got her book here, Keeping Your Kids on God's Side. So there are others that have already recognized this challenge because pastors are failing to equip parents for how to train their kids and how to prepare, how to have spiritual formation with their children. And maybe the pastors think just preaching sermons is good enough, but it's not, because the sermons have failed. Bible illiteracy, I mentioned, theological illiteracy.
So just illiteracy in general.
Well, too, Barna previously put out surveys about why people left the church. Not why they leave the faith, why they leave church. And a lot of it is because the pastors weren't even willing to talk about the issues that teens at that time were thinking about. So social ethical issues, relationship of science and religion, veracity of the Bible and the Christian faith. Those three topics are broad categories of sub-questions and answers in those surveys. Pastors don't deal with the tricky issues. And usually it's because pastors, especially Protestant pastors, are worried that people are going to leave the pews if they do. But people want pastors to deal with the issues facing our culture. So it's like pastors, they want to be on the sidelines, but they can't be. They have to preach into the culture. And many of them don't. And that's why these parents are ill-equipped with the absence of resources to train their kids.
And this is where I wish Veracity Hill was more like the Joe Rogan podcast, where we could spend 3 hours, because I really want to dive down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But it's a little off topic of where we want to go, in that we want to actually get to why we wrote the book and what we're trying to hopefully do with this writing.
Yes.
We started brainstorming about this. First time I remember brainstorming about this was
it the San Antonio
conference? Was at this San Antonio conference about 3 years ago.
Yep.
Where we had a booth. We were talking about Defenders and Veracity Hill at a Christian Legal Society conference.
Right.
And yet we would have multiple people coming up to us asking, what do we have to offer for kids?
Yeah, right.
And
the answer was nothing. And it was, I realized, a lot of Veracity Hill is adults, right? Now I know in the apologetics world, obviously loads of books for adults, college students. There are even books for like toddlers, right? Sort of like those cutesy little board books for little toddlers that parents would read. There are books like that.
Wait, are there like logical fallacies for infants?
Or like the ABC type books.
A is for atheism.
Something like that. Yeah.
Interesting.
So there are books like that. And then too, there's William Lane Craig has his children's books for, parents still read the book, but it's clearly for like 3 to 6 year olds, for the parent to read to the child. A picture book.
Sure.
There was, to my knowledge, there is very little to offer to 8 to 12-year-olds who are reading on their own a chapter book, sort of a young reader's chapter book. Not young reader like early learning, but a chapter book in the same vein as like Hardy Boys or Nancy Drew, or a little earlier would be like the Magic Treehouse series. This book, what we've conceived, is a little advanced. So maybe after reading the Magic Treehouse, children might read Doorway Crew in a year or so later. So I saw that there is very little in terms of worldview formation, and in particular Christian worldview formation, but in a way that's not overtly Christian. It's not. This book is not like a cheesy Christian book. A non-Christian could read this book and enjoy it, and not feel compulsed to become a Christian. What Doorway Crew does is it introduces students to different worldviews. So
and the ability to identify those.
Correct.
I think that's what we're really trying to do, is the illiteracy part of worldview. Mm-hmm. Can we give kids the tools to look around them
and say, "Oh, that's that."
Yeah.
Or that's that ism. Yeah.
Be able to look at their neighbor and say, okay, I can see how you get there. I can see the choices you're making, the culture that's around you, and I can see why you're making the decisions you're making, instead of just you different, you bad.
You're right. Right.
And then when they go into college and they want to rebel and then be like, you different, you bad, I love you.
Yeah.
Now they've got some tools on there.
So how is it that we did that for children? If I can jump into giving the premise of the series.
Yeah, go for it.
So essentially, Doorway Crew is about an after-school club where the students have to observe and report what they see on different planets. And so they've got a special device which sends them in a mysterious way to the different planet to observe and report.
They
dive, yes, that's what we call
language.
And each planet has something that's gone wrong with it. So there are goodies, there are baddies, and the crew has to figure out what's happening. So each planet communicates an ism to the crew. And so that's essentially the premise, short version, premise of the series. And the first adventure is Gabby Goes to Ludicrum. And so what has happened at Ludicrum?
Well, I would also say, I don't think many kids are probably watching this video, so you're giving a little bit of the plot away there. When the child reads the story, they don't realize that there is something wrong at every planet, right?
True.
That is discovered.
That's discovered, yes, sorry. Yeah.
So we got to have our 3-act structure. We got to...
Sorry, yes.
We got to discover the dilemma as we're going into the book. So Gabby Goes to Ludicrum is our first book. We've already written a rough draft of book 2, halfway through.
And we feature the title of the next book in the series in the previous book, if that makes sense.
Right. Because, look, there's a lot of isms in the world.
There are. Oh, my goodness. This could be a really long series.
Right. So every book focuses just on one ism, one particular bent of thought.
Yep.
So book 1, Gabby Goes to Ludicrum. So it is like you said, it's an after-school program. Each book is going to be from a different student's perspective, and those students range in age, which means we'll also have some flexibility in how deep we go. Gabby is 4th grader, so this one doesn't go super deep. Gabby's also new to the school, so she's walking into this to the Doorway Crew, to this after-school club with fresh eyes, just like every reader will as book 1 goes. But hopefully we get down the road and we're at book 10, and we don't spend 9 chapters seeing how Peter Parker's uncle died again. We know that it's already
an ongoing trope, that you see in Spider-Man. Yeah. And there are different levels, right, for the students. So some of them have certain responsibilities. I don't know if we want to talk about level 1s, but most students are level 2 in the first book.
All humans are at least level 2s.
Yes, thank you. Very good. Yep. And so it's a really engaging read. And the plot really it takes you for a ride, pun intended. There's a roller coaster on the cover, okay? Come on. There's So, and the students also have their challenges. Some of them are very typical of a school experience of students, right? What it's like to be picked on in school. They come up with affectionate nicknames for each other, which is something I like to come up with affectionate nicknames for people too, But.
And to kind of peel back the process a little bit, so my background, my undergrad, we both went for our undergrad at Biola University. I was a film major with my BA in screenwriting. Kurt entertained that, right?
That's right, yeah. I was interested in film, and then I realized, man, I was terrible at doing film. And so I did a philosophy class, that intro to philosophy that all the students had to take. Everyone complained about it. I scored a 98 in the class, so I thought, I guess I should study philosophy. That was an easier choice for me. When you're an undeclared, you're trying to figure out what your major should be. It's like, okay, I'll do that.
So one of the things I'm trying to bring is more of the traditional storytelling to that. You're the brains, I'm the brawn of the operation, if you will.
You're not just the brawn. I mean, you've got creative power here. So creative juices.
You heard it here first.
So it's really been a nice dual project discussing, sort of the outline, the plot, the ideas of the characters. And, you've done great work in bringing that to life through the story.
And so where I was going with this is really we have 4 plots in every book. So plot 1 is the adventure actually on the planet. Plot 2 is the emotional growth of our main character, in this case, Gabby. How does Gabby grow through her interactions on this planet and her interactions with the crew members.
Yeah.
Plot 3, there's always going to be some inter-crew conflict. Interpersonal conflict, I don't know if this is just my experience. Every time I have a job, there's some, conflict.
It's just the nature
in the workplace.
It's the
right?
nature of being human, right? You have relationships you have to manage. Yeah.
Hopefully, we're also helping kids kind of see, like, this kid isn't all bad, right? Like, how do we healthily go through conflict with one another?
Yeah.
And then fourth is the meta-narrative. And that's what you were kind of saying to begin with, that something bad is happening at every planet. What is that about? And that's the fun, especially as a storyteller. That's what, gets me super excited is how can we build this tension, just like prestige TV? How can we build this over multiple books so that we are steamrolling? It's not just one-off adventures, but we're building towards a greater story that has a greater gospel-driven payoff.
Yeah. And the plot level 3, the character development, interpersonal conflicts, right? That to me is what I see as a strength to this book. Like many of the classic children's novel series, you see a lot of conflict that the children have to resolve.
Like, what happens to Susan? Does she lose her faith in the Chronicles of Narnia?
Well, exactly.
Does she even go to heaven?
So, intriguing discussion over that. I mean, when you read...
It's upsetting.
The last battle, it is a little upsetting, so, it's also upsetting what happens to the children.
Nah.
That's not upsetting to you? I don't want to spoil the last battle.
Look, at the very... I'm not even going to say that part. At the very end, right? New heaven and new earth.
Yep.
The dogs are racing forward into the new heaven.
Yeah.
It's so glorious.
I know.
Dying. And getting to go there.
Yeah.
It's great. Sorry.
Right.
Spoilers.
Okay.
Spoilers for a 70-year-old, 60-year-old book.
So one of the things that makes a good children's novel book is the conflict, the relationships, trying to navigate those, because children might not be thinking at level 4 plot like we would, adults would. So that's where they're interested in that level 3. They can follow along with the level 3. And then, of course, our hope is with that level 4, as time goes on, they'll realize, like many of us do later, we look back on our memories of reading Chronicles of Narnia. Oh, it was like this. Or, oh, Aslan's sacrifice was kind of like this, right? So we begin to make the connections later on in life. So we read the memorable story because it was engaging to us at that time, even if we weren't thinking level 4. We weren't even aware of what's happening level 4. It was cool that the 7 books of Narnia were interconnected. Likewise, these books will be interconnected. And of course, just to be clear, these are not, we were not striving for Chronicles of Narnia level legendary status.
Why you gotta undercut it, man?
But again, more so, we're just trying to keep our expectations low.
Fair enough.
It's not Narnia, okay? But it's an easy read too. Like, my daughter can just crank through this in an afternoon, right? I mean, it was so engaging to her. She literally sat down for a few hours and read it cover to cover. I mean, it was just engaging to her. So, and she's already asked about number 2.
I will say, I know you're shying away from the comparison to Chronicles of Narnia, but when we were thinking through how long it should be, we literally looked up the word count of Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Right.
And shot and said, let's get within a couple thousand words of that.
That's a strength of Lewis's Narnia books, is that the chapters are, 6 to 9 pages, maybe 12, but nothing long in terms of chapters. So we shot on the low end for our chapters, each chapter has a little cliffhanger. I mean, it's just like Lewis's chapters do. The kids want to know, what happens in the next chapter? I mean, my own kids, when I read Narnia to them, they're asking, can you read just the next line?
Yeah.
Just the next line, next paragraph. It's just so common. Same sort of thing here with Gabby Goes to Ludicrum. Oh, just the next line. Can we read one more chapter? So it's great writing, and it's, I think, just a great overall project that we have commenced upon with Defenders Media, publishing the first book by Defenders. And Dante, do you want to tell folks?
Yeah. So let me just say, so today is the day. Today,
Launch
day. And we are a small operation at Defenders, so we do need help. And part of that help is asking for reviews on Amazon. So today, there are 2 places you can buy the book. You can buy the hard copy, which we didn't want to use Amazon for because we thought we could do it higher quality. There's several little,
So like the paperweight,
yes,
the fonts. We just had more control over that versus, say, working directly with Amazon. And we thought, hey, this is a venture we wanted to try to launch ourselves at Defenders. And so we just had control over everything. The cover, the title. If we were to work with a publisher, they might not go with the title. So we were just able to retain a lot of control. So for those that want to purchase a physical book, you can go to defendersmedia.com/doorwaycrew, or you can also buy the EPUB version at Amazon. Just search for Doorway Crew. You could search for Defenders Media, and you should be able to find this nice orange cover in digital format and get the EPUB right now.
Yeah, as of the recording of this, if you just type in Doorway Crew on Amazon, it is the first hit, so it shouldn't be hard to find. And I will say, the way Amazon's algorithms work, it is verified reviews that help keep us in search results. Not just on Amazon, but through Google as well. So if you want to help us out, a big way would be to buy the book on Amazon, the ebook, which is $2.99. If you really want to help us out, also purchase a hard copy and put it as a stocking stuffer. And then right after you purchase it on Amazon, read it, obviously, write us a review. If we can get a couple dozen reviews, that's going to help keep Doorway Crew in front of people's eyes online.
Yeah, it's a great way of reading a book to your kids, or if you're looking for a Christmas gift, also a great opportunity right now. You can still buy. You'll get it before Christmas if you buy in the next few days. So buy the book now. Also, we have some other products to go along with the book. So we have a Doorway Crew embossed notebook, so your child can take notes about what's happening throughout this book and other books. And also, you know, my kids, they love pins on their backpacks. You know, we went to Mackinac Island. They wanted a little Mackinac Island pin. It's an island in Michigan, very touristy friendly. And so I thought, hey, we could do a little lapel magnet thing. So, of course, they could wear it, or they put it on their backpack and showcase that, hey, they are part of the crew. So it's a nice little way. We've got those products available as well at defendersmedia.com.
And I want to say, too, like, for me, growing up, I devoured 2 series. I devoured Goosebumps and a series called Animorphs. I don't know if you remember those.
Yes. I mean, I read a couple. I didn't get into it as much. But
there's like a picture of like a rabbit and then bad CGI of it turning into a human turning into a rabbit.
Right.
Yeah. And for me, too, it takes a while for me. It took a while for me as a reader to get invested and say, like, I'm an Animorphs kid. I expect the same thing with Doorway Crew. Your kid may really love it, but it's going to probably take a few books. So we're really working hard to try to make this a series that can really
even the way
pull in your children for the long haul.
Yeah, even the way number 2 is drafted, just from a different perspective, readers are in for quite the ride.
Book 2, Conrad goes to Rainbow Falls, so it's a boy instead of girl. She's more shy, he's more hyper. So like book 1's more Dr. J, book 2's more Dante. So thanks for hearing our pitch out. I feel like we're hawking a little bit, but hopefully
if you've got questions, feel free to comment. You can also use the Veracity Hill contact form to ask questions about Doorway Crew. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
2 things. Also, because kids, I want to be at the front of kids' minds. So even between books, kids still have the opportunity to think about Doorway Crew. So we created a Substack, which are reports from
level 1 explorers.
Yeah, so reports from level 1 explorers, and these are just weekly sound bites, if you will, blurbs, about a page long usually, reports of other isms that we won't spend a whole book on, but each one is, hey, what if a world was full of, now I can't think of any of the ethnocentrists.
Ah, right.
Like, what does ethnocentrism and that ism, what would that do to a world?
Encompassed at the, idea encompassed at the planetary level.
Right.
Yeah.
So we just have fun writing these little reports. Those are free. You can subscribe right now. We've already got 5 or 6 of those out. And those will go directly to your inbox.
Those are a lot of fun, too. You can follow Defenders Media on social media. We're also
link there, too.
Yeah, we're sharing snippets to the whole Substack from there,
Yeah. Since this might be my only time to be in the office with you, I want to
hope not.
On camera.
Yeah, well, maybe not.
Well, we'll see.
But it's great to have you up here.
Yeah.
From your home state down south.
I have to shout out my school, my kids. So I got 10 students at Creekwood Academy, where I teach this year. So I want to shout out, let's see if I can do them all. Reagan, Dylan, Noah, Aaron, Nick, Isaac, Andy, Madison, Piper, and Grace.
Wow.
I did it.
Nice.
Thank you, guys. And thank you for having me on.
No, of course, great to chat about Doorway Crew. And, when number 2 comes out next year, since our goal is to do one a year, at least, things might start cranking. We'll see. At least 1 year.
1 a year? No. We'll do more than 1 year.
That's what we thought of like 2 years ago, right? It's start to finish. Yeah. It always takes longer than you think. Even with the publishers, it takes longer than. So, but no, I like your ambition and optimism. So yes, thanks for indulging us as we talk about Doorway Crew and Christian Worldview Formation. So I guess that does it for our show today. I'm grateful for the continued support of our patrons. Those are folks that just chip in a few bucks each month to support Veracity Hill. If you want to learn more about what it's like to be a patron, you can go to veracityhill.com/donate. Some information there. I want to thank our technical producer, Gabe, for this new setup here today in our new office. We're excited. You might see us from time to time doing different spots here in the new office as we settle in. I want to thank Mark, our communications associate, and I want to thank Dante for coming up and sharing a couple days here at the office.
I don't think we said it's $9.99.
Okay, I don't think we did, yeah. $9.99.
For the physical one.
Physical book. Yeah,
Defenders.com/doorway crew.
Defendersmedia.com/doorway crew. It's all right. And let's see, and thank the sponsors of the Veracity Hill podcast. They are Apologetics 315, Rethinking Hell, and Defenders Media. And last but certainly not least, I want to thank you for listening in and for watching here as we strive for truth on Worldview Formation.
This has been Veracity Hill, a viewer and listener supported program. For more resources, including past shows, visit veracityhill.com.